Human uses earth plants to heal alien princess. Ancient law makes him royal consort, reaches its dramatic peak when Grant faces legendary General Varkas in single combat. Against overwhelming odds, the farmer-turned-healer uses agility and clever tactics to defeat the Empire's greatest warrior, proving Liax's cure legitimate and cementing his place as royal consort, while spectators from 17 worlds watch in stunned silence. The cold blue light of the crystalline fixtures overhead cast an eerie glow across the obsidian floor of the throne room. Grant Harper stood, hands bound, head bowed, surrounded by the whispers of dozens of royal officials whose shadowed forms lingered at the edges of his vision. The overwhelming grandeur of Celestia pressed down on him, making each breath laborious. The air here was different, too perfect, too filtered, nothing like the rich, earthy scent of New Terra's fields that still clung to his clothes. Before him, seated upon a throne that seemed to be carved from a single, massive gemstone, Emperor Valon studied him with eyes of quicksilver. The Emperor's skin held the same pale blue tint as the hovering crystals, though his bore the faint lines of age. His white hair cascaded down his shoulders like moonlight on water, and when he finally spoke, his voice resonated with the authority of someone who commanded hundreds of worlds. "You are Grant Harper of New Terra," the Emperor stated, not a question but a declaration. "A farmer." Grant raised his eyes, refusing to show fear despite the chains at his wrists. "I am—" A murmur rippled through the assembled court. The Emperor leaned forward, his gaze intensifying. "I want you, a farmer from New Terra, to examine the health condition of Princess Liax. All royal scientists have failed. If you succeed, I will grant freedom to your people. If not—" The Emperor let the threat hang in the air, unfinished but crystal clear. Grant's instinct was to refuse. He was no doctor, no scientist, just a farmer whose home had been raised in Celestia's territorial expansion. Being used as some experiment in the royal court was the last thing he wanted. But the memory of New Terra burning, of his people scattered and enslaved, flashed vividly in his mind. "Why me?" he managed to ask, voice steadier than he felt. A tall, thin alien with skin the color of amethyst stepped forward. "His Majesty has been informed of Earth's primitive botanical knowledge. Princess Liax's condition defies our medical understanding. We have exhausted all conventional options." Grant understood then. He was their last resort, an exotic solution to try before giving up completely. The realization should have offended him, but instead, a flicker of curiosity ignited. What kind of illness could baffle an empire with technology centuries beyond Earth's? From a chamber adjacent to the throne room came a soft moan. Grant turned to see a hovering medical platform guided by attendants. Upon it lay a figure so still she might have been carved from the same crystal as the throne. Her skin was the palest blue, like morning sky reflected in dew, and her silver eyes fluttered open for just a moment. Her white hair spread around her like tendrils of starlight. "Grant," she whispered, before her eyes closed again. The Emperor's face tightened with concern. "My daughter knows of you. How? I cannot say. But she speaks your name in her delirium." Grant felt something inexplicable pull at him, a connection to this alien princess he'd never met. Perhaps it was compassion, or perhaps it was the opportunity she represented, freedom for his people. "I'll try," he said finally. "But I'll need access to your gardens, to your soil, and I'll need my hands unbound." The Emperor nodded once, and the chains fell away. "The consequences of failure are severe, Earthman," he warned, "but success will be rewarded beyond measure." And so began the strangest 3 weeks of Grant Harper's life. The Royal Gardens, or Biodome, as the Celestians called it, was like nothing Grant had ever seen. A vast enclosed ecosystem housed plants from 100 different worlds, bathed in the omnipresent blue and purple light that seemed to define the Celestian aesthetic. The air here was humid and rich with unfamiliar scents, some pleasant, others acrid enough to make his eyes water. Dr. Morvich, assigned to supervise Grant's work, followed him with obvious disdain. The medical officer's elongated features twisted in a perpetual expression of skepticism. "The Emperor indulges primitive methods out of desperation," Morvich said, watching Grant examine the soil composition. "But do not mistake his tolerance for respect. You are a barbarian playing with dirt, while we wield the power of molecular reconstruction." Grant ignored the jibe, focused instead on the soil sample between his fingers. It was mineral-rich, but with a strange alkaline quality that would kill most earth plants immediately. He would need to neutralize it somehow. From his pocket, he pulled out a small cloth pouch, the only possession the guards had allowed him to keep. Inside were various seeds from Earth: willow, echinacea, ferns, and others his grandmother had taught him to cultivate. They were his last connection to home, seeds he'd managed to hide when the Celestian forces burned their farmlands. "What are those?" Morvich asked, momentarily curious despite himself. "Hope," Grant replied simply. Over the next 7 days, Grant worked tirelessly. He created specialized soil mixtures, neutralizing the toxic elements of zirconian earth with carefully balanced compounds. He planted his precious earth seeds in small containers, nurturing each one with the skill passed down through generations of his family. The willow bark grew first, then the echinacea, followed by various ferns that contained enzyme inhibitors he suspected would counteract the alkaloid-like symptoms he'd observed in Princess Leax. Each day, the princess was brought to the terrarium, a specialized chamber within the biodome where Grant had established his makeshift earth garden. Though still weak, her trembling had lessened, her breathing grown more regular. The court physicians monitored her vital signs with their advanced equipment, grudgingly noting improvements they couldn't explain. In the evenings, after the day's work, Grant was permitted brief visits to Leax's recovery chamber. The first time he saw her conscious, sitting upright though still pale and fragile, something shifted inside him. Her silver eyes studied him with intensity. "You're growing earth plants," she said, her voice soft but clear. "I can sense them. They sing differently than our flora." Grant was surprised. "You can sense plants?" A smile ghosted across her lips. "All Royal Celestians possess a connection to living things. It is how we rule so many diverse worlds." She reached out a slender hand. "Tell me about them, about your earth plants. How do they heal?" So Grant told her about his grandmother's garden on New Terra, about the medicinal properties of willow bark for pain and fever, about echinacea's immune-boosting qualities, about the ancient ferns whose evolutionary path had created unique compounds that could inhibit harmful enzymes. Leax listened with rapt attention, her silver eyes wide with wonder. "Your people understood this without scanners, without molecular analysis?" she asked. "We learned through observation, through trial and error over thousands of years," Grant explained. "Sometimes the oldest knowledge is the deepest." As he adjusted her IV drip with the plant-based compound he'd created, their fingers brushed. A jolt of awareness passed between them, and Leax quickly withdrew her hand. "I should not," she began, then stopped herself. "You are risking much to help me, Grant Harper." "I'm doing it for my people," he said, though even as he spoke, he wasn't entirely sure that was still his only motivation. "Of course," she replied, but her silver eyes held his for a moment longer than necessary. "Still, I am grateful." On the 10th night, everything changed. Grant was awakened by alarms blaring through the palace. He rushed to his small laboratory within the terrarium to find the door forced open. His carefully cultivated plants smashed and scattered across the floor. Blood, a strange purplish hue, spattered the walls. Guards were engaged in combat with black-clad figures in the corridor, though they wore Imperial Guard uniforms. Something about their movements, told Grant they were not regular palace security. One of them spotted him and lunged, a thin blade aimed at his throat. Grant ducked, grabbing a small knife he used for cutting plant samples. Years of defending his farm against predators had made him quick. He parried the first thrust, then drove his blade into the attacker's side, finding a gap in the armor. Two more attackers converged on him. Grant retreated, using lab equipment as barriers, fighting with desperate intensity. He managed to incapacitate one with a heavy canister, but the other cornered him against the wall. A flash of white intercepted the attacker. It was Lex, moving with surprising strength for someone so recently bedridden. She wielded what looked like a crystalline dagger, forcing the assassin back. "Princess!" the attacker hissed. "Princess Kestra wants you dead!" Lex faltered at the name, giving the assassin an opening. Grant lunged forward, driving his knife into the attacker's shoulder. Together, they subdued him, as guards finally reached them. "Kestra," Lex whispered, leaning heavily against a table, her burst of strength fading. "My own sister." Grant looked at the destruction around them, his plants, his work ruined. But more importantly, he now understood the true nature of Lex's illness. "It's not a natural disease," he said, examining a residue on one of his broken plant containers. "It's a bioweapon, an engineered alkaloid toxin." Lex's eyes widened. "Biological warfare is forbidden in the Empire." "Which is why no one suspected it," Grant replied grimly. "Your royal physicians were looking for a natural illness, not deliberate poisoning." They interrogated the captured assassin, who eventually revealed that the bioweapon had been distributed to 17 loyal worlds of the Empire. It was a slow-acting toxin, designed to mimic a natural illness, targeting specifically the royal bloodline. Grant confronted Dr. Morvich, whose initial denials crumbled under pressure. The physician had been recruited by Kestra, hiding information about the spreading illness. "We need to change our approach," Grant told the Emperor. "Treating symptoms isn't enough. We need to find the source of toxin production in her body." "What do you propose?" Emperor Valon asked, his voice weary with worry. "I need freedom to examine Lex according to Earth traditions. Venous access, blood testing, skin-to-skin contact to monitor enzyme inhibitor reactions. No interference from royal physicians with their observational machines." The Emperor hesitated, but Lex spoke up from her bed. "Father," she whispered, "you must trust him." After a moment's consideration, Valon nodded his consent. 4 days later, the grand hologram hall was filled to capacity. Emperor Valon had summoned representatives from all 17 core royal houses, many wavering in their loyalty, since rumors of the princess's illness had spread. The vast chamber's walls displayed real-time projections of the proceedings to worlds across the Empire. Grant stood on a raised platform, beside a volunteer servant who had been injected with a higher dose of the same bioweapon affecting Lex. The man trembled violently, his blue skin taking on a sickly gray pallor. Dr. Morvich, now under close guard but required to participate due to his expertise, approached with a plasma emitter. "Standard Celestian protocol for systemic distress," he announced to the assembly. The beam of light enveloped the volunteer, temporarily stabilizing his symptoms. For a few minutes, the trembling subsided. The skin tone improved. Then, just as suddenly, the symptoms returned with greater intensity. Murmurs of disappointment rippled through the crowd. Several officials shook their heads, clearly believing Grant's promised demonstration would fail, like all previous attempts. "Your methods have temporary effects at best," a royal official called out. "The Earthman has deceived you, Your Majesty." Grant stepped forward, holding a vial of translucent liquid, his earth plant extract, a combination of willow bark, echinacea, and enzyme inhibitors from the ferns. He mixed it with a catalyst, then administered it intravenously to the volunteer. For 5 tense minutes, nothing seemed to happen. Then, gradually, The trembling hand steadied. The ashen color faded, replaced by healthy blue. The heartbeat on the monitoring hologram stabilized. This could still be temporary, someone objected. Grant nodded. A fair concern. He turned to the Emperor. With your permission, I propose a second injection of the toxin. If he remains immune, we'll know the treatment works. Emperor Valon considered, then gestured his approval. A physician administered another dose of the bioweapon, twice what had initially sickened the volunteer. The crowd held its breath. Minutes passed. The volunteer remained stable. No tremors, no discoloration, no elevated heart rate. The assembly erupted in amazed whispers. Grant raised his voice to be heard. Only Earth plants, combined with Princess Liax's royal bloodline, can create stable immunity. The bioweapon was designed specifically to target Celestian physiology, but Earth's flora evolved along a completely different path. The compounds they produce are alien to the toxin. It has no defense against them. Liax rose from her seat at the edge of the platform. Though still thin, her strength had clearly returned. The royal blue of her skin had deepened to its natural hue, her silver eyes bright with renewed vigor. Kestra orchestrated this, she announced, her voice carrying through the hall and across the holographic projections. She wanted me dead so she could claim the throne. The revelation sent shockwaves through the assembly. Loyalty shifted visibly as dignitaries processed this betrayal. Grant stood tall beside Liax, their shoulders almost touching. I owe my life to Grant Harper, Liax continued, and by the ancient law of binding debt, he shall become my royal consort. This caused even greater commotion. A human, a farmer from a conquered world, elevated to consort of the future empress. It was unprecedented. Emperor Valon raised a hand for silence. The law is clear. He who saves royal blood becomes bound to it. But first, there is the matter of Kestra's treachery to address. Before he could continue, a messenger burst into the hall. Your Majesty! News from the Outer Rim. Princess Kestra has assembled a fleet from 3 star systems. The bioweapon is spreading. They prepare to attack Zirconia. Another messenger followed quickly. A transmission from Princess Kestra herself! The holographic displays shifted to show a woman who resembled Liax, but with harder features and eyes that burned with ambition rather than compassion. If my sister still lives, Kestra's voice rang out, then let her champion, this human, face Varkas in single combat. Victory or defeat will determine the rightful heir to Celestia. Varkas appeared beside her in the projection, a towering figure with 4 golden eyes and battle armor that spoke of countless victories. The transmission ended, leaving the hall in stunned silence. Grant turned to Liax. What is single combat? An ancient tradition, she explained quietly. A trial by combat to settle disputes of succession. If you lose, Kestra will claim I was never truly cured, that you deceived the court. The royal houses will withdraw their support. And millions on Zirconia will die from her bioweapon, Emperor Valon added grimly. Grant looked between them, understanding the gravity of what was being asked. He was no warrior, certainly not trained to face a legendary general like Varkas. But he thought of New Terra, of the promise of freedom for his people, of Liax's silver eyes that had begun to haunt his dreams. I'll do it, he said. But we need time. Time to grow more Earth Gardens, to produce enough antitoxin for the entire empire. Liax touched his arm, her fingers cool against his skin. You need not fight alone. We fight for each other now. Their eyes met, and in that moment, hope blossomed throughout the royal court. The training arena was brutally efficient, a stark contrast to the ornate palace chambers. Its metal surfaces gleamed under harsh white light. Various weapons and training apparatus arranged with military precision. General Thane, Liax's loyal head of security, circled Grant with a critical eye. The general's 7-foot frame and iridescent skin made him an intimidating instructor. Varkas is the Empire's greatest warrior, Thane said bluntly. He has never lost in single combat. He will not expect you to possess any skill, which is our only advantage. For the next 4 days, Grant trained relentlessly. Thane taught him the basics of plasma sword combat, how to deflect energy bolts, how to use his smaller size and greater agility against Varkas's overwhelming strength. You cannot match him in power, Thane explained, demonstrating a defensive stance. But you can exhaust him. Target joint weaknesses in his armor. Use his momentum against him. Each night, Grant collapsed into exhausted sleep, only to begin again at dawn. His muscles screamed in protest, but determination drove him forward. While he trained, Lex oversaw the mass production of the Earth Plant Remedy, establishing gardens on every loyal world to combat the spreading bioweapon. The night before the combat, Grant stood on a balcony overlooking the capital city of Zirconia. The blue crystal spires stretched to the horizon, glittering under twin moons. It was beautiful in an alien way, so different from the rolling fields of New Terra. He sensed Lex's presence before she spoke. "I thought I might find you here," she said, joining him at the railing. Her recovery was nearly complete, though she still moved with careful grace. "I was just thinking about home," Grant admitted. "How strange that I'm fighting for an empire that destroyed it." Lex's expression softened with understanding. "Not for the empire as it was," she corrected. "For what it could become." She held out her hand, revealing a small ornament, the celestial crest, symbol of royal authority. "This belongs to the future empress," she explained. "But tonight, I give it to you as a promise. When this is over, when I take the throne, New Terra will be restored. Your people will be free." Grant took the crest, feeling its weight, physical and symbolic. "And what of us?" he asked quietly. "This royal consort business. Is it just a legal obligation?" Lex stepped closer, her silver eyes reflecting the moonlight. "It began as law," she acknowledged. "But laws don't make hearts beat faster when someone enters a room." She reached up, touching his face with cool fingers. "I never expected to find someone who would risk everything for me, who would see me as more than a princess." Grant covered her hand with his own. "And I never expected to care for someone from the stars." Under the blue light of the hovering crystals, their lips met in a kiss that bridged worlds. When they parted, both knew that whatever tomorrow brought, they would face it together. "Come back to me," Lex whispered. "Always," Grant promised. The Grand Colosseum hummed with the energy of 50,000 spectators. Royal officials, nobles, military commanders from across the empire filled every seat, while holographic projections broadcast the event to every Celestian world. Grant entered wearing lightweight armor designed by Lex herself, a hybrid of Celestian technology and Earth-inspired patterns. It allowed maximum mobility while protecting vital areas. In his hand, he carried a plasma sword calibrated to his specifications, lighter than standard, allowing for quicker movements. Across the arena floor, Varkas made his entrance to thunderous applause. The general towered over Grant, his 4 golden eyes scanning his opponent with predatory assessment. His armor was heavy, ornate with battle honors, and he wielded a massive plasma sword that hummed with barely contained energy. Emperor Valen rose from the royal box, his voice amplified across the Colosseum. "By ancient tradition, this single combat will determine the truth of Princess Lex's recovery and the legitimacy of Princess Kestra's challenge to succession. Combat continues until surrender or incapacitation. May justice prevail." A crystal sphere in the center of the arena pulsed 3 times, then burst into light, the signal to begin. Varkas charged immediately, his massive sword arcing down with enough force to cleave Grant in 2. Grant sidestepped, just as Thane had taught him, letting the blade crash into the floor. Sparks erupted as Grant counterattacked, aiming for the joint at Varkas's knee. His blade glanced off the armor, but the general grunted in surprise at Grant's speed. The crowd roared at the unexpected competence of the human challenger. "The princess's pet has been trained," Varkas taunted, advancing again with controlled fury. Grant didn't waste breath on a reply, focusing instead on the rhythm of attack and defense Tyne had drilled into him. He ducked another powerful swing, this time slipping inside Varkas's guard to land a scoring hit on the general's side. For 20 minutes, they danced across the arena floor. Grant accumulated small wounds, a burn across his shoulder, a slice along his thigh. But he kept moving, kept breathing. Varkas, unused to prolonged combat against such an elusive opponent, began to slow. The crowd, initially expecting a quick victory for Varkas, now watched in stunned silence as the human farmer held his own against Celestia's greatest warrior. In the royal box, Liax clutched the armrests of her seat, her knuckles white with tension. Beside her, Emperor Valon leaned forward, his expression unreadable. Grant felt his strength ebbing. One solid hit from Varkas would end the fight. He needed to finish this now. Remembering Thane's teachings, he feigned exhaustion, allowing his guard to drop just slightly. Varkas saw the opening and lunged, committing fully to what he believed would be the final blow. At the last possible moment, Grant pivoted, using the general's momentum against him. His plasma blade flashed in a diagonal cut, slicing deep into Varkas's shoulder joint. The general stumbled, his sword arm suddenly useless. Before he could recover, Grant pressed his advantage, forcing Varkas to one knee with his blade hovering at the general's throat. The Colosseum fell silent. "Yield," Grant demanded, his voice carrying in the hush. Varkas's golden eyes blazed with fury, then dimmed with resignation. "I yield," he growled. "Hold!" Emperor Valon's command echoed across the arena. "Lower your weapons." Grant stepped back, his plasma sword deactivating. His legs trembled with exhaustion, but he remained standing as the Emperor descended to the arena floor. "The combat is decided," Valon announced. "Grant Harper has proven victorious. Princess Liax's recovery is validated, and Princess Kestra's challenge is rejected." The crowd erupted, most cheering the unexpected outcome. In a private box, Kestra's face contorted with rage and disbelief. The purple sash nobles, who had supported her claim, began quietly distancing themselves, unwilling to back a losing cause. Liax rushed to Grant's side, supporting him as his adrenaline faded. Together, they faced the Emperor and the assembled Empire. Princess Liax," she declared, her voice carrying to every world via the holographic projections. "With the support of my consort Grant Harper, will lead Celestia into an era of peace and biological diversity. Kestra's betrayal will be answered with justice." The crowd's approval was deafening. The alliance of human and Celestian had become a symbol of a new beginning. According to the ancient law of binding debt, Grant and Liax were formally bound in the Sovereign Hall 3 days later. They exchanged the celestial crest and a pouch of earth seeds as tokens of their union. Trumpets sounded as Liax took her place on the sovereign throne of Celestia, with Grant standing beside her as royal consort. The following weeks saw dramatic changes throughout the Empire. Earth gardens spread across the 17 loyal worlds, combining Celestian technology with Earth cultivation methods. Thousands of plant species flourished, producing enough antitoxin to halt the bioweapon spread. Kestra was captured in the Outer Rim territories, her rebellion crushed without the backing of the major royal houses. The royal court tried her for treason, and her bioweapon laboratories were dismantled. True to Liax's promise, the people of New Terra were resettled on a neutral ground planet, with conditions similar to their original home. Grant sent regular communications. "To my fellow New Terrans, though I cannot be with you, Earth seeds have taken root among the stars. Protect nature, cultivate the land, and know that your sacrifice has changed an empire." On Zirconia, Liax instituted reforms as the new empress. She established the Academy of Terraforming and Botanical Studies, with Grant as its director. Together, they trained a new generation of Celestian Earth hybrids in the art of cultivation. One evening, they walked together through the bioluminescent glade, a new addition to the palace gardens that combined earth plants with light-emitting Celestian flora. Hand in hand, they gazed out over the glittering expanse of Zirconia's capital. "You've changed an entire empire," Lex said softly, leaning against Grant's shoulder. "And you've opened your heart," he replied, smiling down at her. Under the twinkling blue light of hovering crystals, surrounded by glowing ferns and flowering vines, the human and the Celestian stood united, bound by knowledge, love, and a shared vision for the future. The Celestian Empire accelerated its terraforming efforts, spreading earth plants to barren planets across the galaxy. Meanwhile, in the shadows, Kestra nursed her grudges, promising herself that one day she would return to claim what she believed was rightfully hers. But for now, Grant and Lex were ready to face whatever challenges came their way. "One seed, one person, one love at a time," Lex murmured. "We will make this universe bloom." Grant squeezed her hand in agreement. The farmer and the princess, an unlikely pair who had reshaped the stars. The Celestian Palace buzzed with activity as delegates from the 17 core worlds gathered for the first interplanetary botanical summit. 6 months had passed since Grant's victory in the arena, and the changes throughout the Empire were nothing short of revolutionary. In the Grand Conference Hall, Grant stood before a diverse audience of aliens from across the galaxy. Behind him, hovering displays showed time-lapse imagery of once barren planets, now flourishing with greenery. "The Earth Gardens are more than just a source of medicine," Grant explained, gesturing to the images. "They represent a new philosophy for the Empire, one where diversity is strength, where ancient knowledge complements advanced technology." From her throne at the center of the hall, Empress Lex watched with pride. Her recovery was complete, her silver eyes bright with purpose. The crown she wore, redesigned to incorporate both Celestian crystals and subtle earth motifs, symbolized the new era she was ushering in. After the presentation, as delegates mingled and examined samples of earth plants adapted for various alien environments, Lex joined Grant at a quieter corner of the hall. "The reports from New Terra are encouraging," she told him. "The first harvest has exceeded expectations. Your people are thriving." Grant's face lit up at the news. "I'd like to visit soon. They should see what we've accomplished together." "We will," Lex promised. "Once the Academy's first-class graduates, they should experience Earth cultivation firsthand." Their conversation was interrupted by General Thane, who approached with a respectful bow. "Your Majesty, Consort Harper, we've received disturbing reports from the border regions. Unidentified ships have been detected near the Kestrel Nebula." Grant and Lex exchanged concerned glances. The Kestrel Nebula had been named for Kestra long ago, a coincidence that now seemed ominous. "Increase patrols in the sector," Lex ordered, "but discreetly. We don't want to alarm the delegates during the summit." Thane nodded and departed. Grant frowned, troubled by the implications. "You think it's her?" he asked quietly. "Kestra is nothing if not persistent," Lex replied, "but she won't find us unprepared this time." As they returned to the conference, Dr. Morvich approached. Since his role in Kestra's plot had been revealed, he had been demoted, but permitted to continue his research under strict supervision. His attitude toward Grant had shifted from contempt to grudging respect. "Consort Harper," he said, his tone formal. "The hybridization experiments with the fern species have produced unexpected results. I believe you should see them." In the laboratory adjoining the conference hall, Morvich displayed a specimen unlike anything Grant had seen before. The fern's fronds pulsed with gentle blue light, similar to Celestian bioluminescence, but with the structure and properties of earth plants. "It's adapting," Grant realized, examining the specimen closely. not just surviving in alien soil, but incorporating elements of its new environment. Precisely, Morvik confirmed. And the medicinal properties are enhanced tenfold. This could revolutionize our treatment protocols across the Empire. As word of the discovery spread through the summit, delegates clamored to establish similar research facilities on their worlds. What had begun as an emergency measure to counter Kestra's bioweapon was evolving into an empire-wide renaissance of biological science. That evening, Grant and Leax hosted a banquet for the delegates in the Crystal Garden, a new addition to the palace that showcased the successful integration of flora from dozens of worlds. As music played and conversations flowed, Emperor Valon pulled Grant aside. "You continue to surprise me, Earthman," the Emperor said, his tone warmer than Grant had ever heard it. "When I first ordered you brought before me, I expected nothing. Now you stand as consort to the future of Celestia." "I'm still just a farmer at heart," Grant replied honestly. Valon's expression grew serious. "Perhaps that is precisely what this empire needed. We became so enamored with our technology, our expansion, that we forgot the fundamental truths of life itself." He gestured to where Leax was conversing with delegates, her animated expressions showing a confidence and joy that had been absent when Grant first saw her. "You've given my daughter more than health," Valon continued. "You've given her purpose. For that alone, the debt Celestia owes you can never be repaid." Before Grant could respond, a commotion at the entrance drew their attention. A messenger hurried toward them, face tight with urgency. "Your Majesty, forgive the interruption, but we've received a transmission from the Kestrel Nebula. It's a direct challenge from Princess Kestra." The banquet fell silent as the large holographic display at the center of the garden activated. Kestra's face appeared, her features hardened by months in exile, but her eyes still burning with the same ambition. "My dear sister," she began, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Such a touching gathering of your new friends. How quickly they forget their true allegiance." Leax stepped forward, her posture regal and unflinching. "What do you want, Kestra?" "Want? I want what is mine by right. The throne you stole with your human pet's trickery." Kestra's image expanded to show a massive fleet behind her. "I have new allies now, ones who understand the true destiny of Celestia. Surrender the throne willingly, and I may show mercy." "Your bioweapon failed," Grant interjected. "Your champion lost. By every law of Celestia, you have no claim." Kestra's eyes narrowed at Grant's interruption. "Laws can be rewritten by the victorious, farmer. And this time, I will not rely on subtle poisons or single warriors. I come with the might of the Outer Rim behind me." "The Outer Rim worlds rejected your leadership months ago," Emperor Valon stated. "The official governments, perhaps?" Kestra smiled coldly. "But revolutions brew in the shadows. My supporters have overthrown those weak regimes. By the time your fleet mobilizes, 3 star systems will have fallen." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the banquet in stunned silence. General Thane was already issuing orders into his communicator, organizing Celestia's defense. Emperor Valon turned to address the assembled delegates. "My friends, it seems our summit must end prematurely. Return to your worlds. Prepare your defenses. Celestia stands with you against this threat." As the delegates dispersed in organized haste, Grant pulled Leax and Valon into a quieter alcove of the garden. "This isn't just about the throne anymore," he said urgently. Kestra wouldn't reveal her hand unless she was confident of victory. She must have a new weapon or strategy. Leax nodded in agreement. "The question is, what? We've distributed the antitoxin empire-wide. Her original bioweapon is useless now." "Perhaps not a weapon," Emperor Valon mused, "but a vulnerability we haven't considered." Grant's mind raced through possibilities, then suddenly froze on a terrible thought. "The Earth Gardens," he whispered. "They're our strength now, but also our weakness. What if she's found a way to target them specifically? Liax's eyes widened. A botanical plague? Something that could wipe out earth plants across the Empire in one stroke? Leaving us vulnerable to a second wave of the original bioweapon, Grant concluded grimly. Emperor Valon didn't hesitate. General Thane, he called, summoning the security chief. Establish quarantine protocols for all Earth Gardens immediately. No plant material moves between worlds until further notice. As Thane hurried to implement the order, Liax turned to Grant, her silver eyes reflecting the seriousness of the situation. We need to create a fail-safe, she said. Something that can protect our gardens even if Kestra succeeds in releasing her plague. Grant nodded, already formulating plans. The hybrid fern Morvic showed us. It's already adapting, becoming something neither fully Earth nor fully Celestian. If we can accelerate that process, create plants that share the medicinal properties, but with different genetic structures. A genetic firebreak, Liax finished his thought. Even if one variation is targeted, others might survive. For the next 48 hours, Grant, Liax, and a team of the Empire's best botanists and geneticists worked without rest. The hybrid fern became the template for a dozen variations, each with slightly modified genetic structures, but all retaining the essential healing properties. Meanwhile, Celestia's fleet mobilized to confront Kestra's forces at the edge of the Kestral Nebula. Reports flowed in hourly, planetary defenses activated, civilian populations moved to secure locations, Earth Gardens placed under heavy guard. On the third day, as Grant was examining the latest hybrid specimens in the Palace laboratory, Liax burst in with news. Scout ships have detected unusual projectiles being launched toward our border worlds, she reported breathlessly. Not conventional weapons, small, stealth delivery systems. Environmental sensors indicate biological material. She's launching the plague, Grant confirmed, his fears realized. How long until impact? Hours at most. The fleet is attempting to intercept, but the projectiles are numerous and scattered. Grant gestured to the rows of hybrid plants they'd developed. These aren't ready for full-scale deployment. We need more time. Liax's expression hardened with determination. Then we change the battlefield. If we can't protect every garden, we focus on preserving the source. She activated the laboratory's communication system. General Thane, prepare my personal vessel, and contact Emperor Valon. Tell him we're implementing contingency seed vault. Grant raised an eyebrow questioningly. An ancient protocol, Liax explained. In times of empire-wide crisis, we preserve the future by securing its seeds. Literally. Within the hour, they were aboard Liax's sleek vessel, accompanied by a select team of scientists and a cargo hold filled with samples of every earth plant variety and their new hybrids. As they broke atmosphere, the vastness of space opened before them, and with it, the distant flickers of battle at the nebula's edge. Where are we going? Grant asked, watching Zirconia shrink behind them. The Sanctuary Moon, Liax replied, her hands deftly navigating the ship's controls. A hidden world known only to the royal family. Its location has been preserved through generations precisely for moments like this. As their ship accelerated into hyperspace, Grant felt a strange mixture of dread and hope. Everything he had built with Liax, the Earth Gardens, the Academy, the new alliance between their peoples, hung in the balance. Yet, something new was being born from this crisis. A deeper integration of Earth and Celestian, a hybrid future neither could have imagined alone. The Sanctuary Moon proved to be a small, unremarkable-looking satellite, orbiting a gas giant at the edge of Celestian space. Its plain exterior concealed an elaborate underground facility, a perfect environment for preserving and cultivating their precious cargo. For 2 weeks, they worked in isolation, receiving only encrypted updates from the ongoing conflict. Kestra's botanical plague had indeed struck several border worlds, devastating their Earth Gardens. But the quarantine protocols had limited its spread, and the Empire's scientists were already working to develop countermeasures based on data Grant transmitted from the sanctuary. Then, on the 15th day, a transmission from Emperor Valon himself reached them. The tide turns. Kestra's initial advantage is fading. Her forces expected us to collapse without our Earth medicines, but our reserves have held. More importantly, the hybrid varieties you developed are showing natural resistance to the plague. We're already cultivating them on reclaimed worlds. Liax squeezed Grant's hand as they listened, relief evident in her eyes. However, Valon continued, his tone growing grave, Kestra has retreated to her flagship with her most loyal followers. Intelligence suggests she has one final gambit, a direct assault on Zirconia itself. Return immediately. The Empire needs its Empress and her consort for what may be our final confrontation. The journey back to Zirconia was tense, but swift. As their ship approached the capital planet, they could see the increased security, a protective net of warships and defense platforms surrounding the jewel of Celestia. In the palace war room, Emperor Valon greeted them with tired eyes, but a determined spirit. Holographic displays showed the position of Celestian forces and the approaching threat, Kestra's flagship, accompanied by 3 heavy cruisers. She's abandoned her broader strategy, General Tain explained, indicating the tactical display. This is now a decapitation strike. Eliminate the leadership, throw the Empire into chaos, then seize control in the aftermath. When will they arrive? Liax asked, studying the projections. Approximately 18 hours, Thane replied. Our forces are positioned to intercept, but her flagship has impressive defensive capabilities. We cannot guarantee it won't break through. Grant circled the holographic display, considering options. If this is a personal vendetta now, perhaps we can use that to our advantage. All eyes turned to him expectantly. Kestra wants to prove she's the rightful heir, Grant continued. Her entire claim is based on the belief that she would be a stronger ruler than Liax. What if we challenge that directly? Another single combat? Emperor Valon asked skeptically. No, Grant shook his head. Something more symbolic, a test of leadership, broadcast across the Empire. Liax caught his meaning immediately. A sovereign's challenge. The ancient tradition where rival claimants to the throne must demonstrate their fitness to rule through acts of wisdom rather than war. Can such a challenge be issued during active conflict? Thane asked. It not only can, it must be honored, Emperor Valon confirmed. No Celestian ruler has ever refused a sovereign's challenge. To do so would be to admit unworthiness before the entire Empire. The plan took shape quickly. Using the Empire's communication network, they issued a formal challenge to Kestra. Both she and Liax would demonstrate their vision for Celestia's future, not through destruction, but through creation. Each would present their solution to the botanical plague, showing how they would heal the Empire in its time of need. The challenge would take place on a neutral orbital platform, under the eyes of representatives from all loyal worlds. It would be broadcast throughout the Empire, allowing all citizens to witness the true nature of each potential ruler. To everyone's surprise, Kestra accepted. Perhaps she believed she could still win through guile, or perhaps the pull of ancient tradition was too strong to resist. Whatever her reasoning, 12 hours later, her flagship entered a holding position near the orbital platform, and she arrived with a small entourage of scientists and guards. The platform's central chamber had been transformed into a demonstration arena, with scientific equipment, plant samples, and monitoring systems arranged on opposite sides. In the center, a neutral zone contained plague-infected samples from the border worlds. Kestra entered with cold confidence, her eyes briefly narrowing at the sight of Grant, standing beside Liax. Still hiding behind your human pet, sister? How disappointing. Grant is my consort and partner, Liax replied evenly. As Emperor Valon is our witness, and the people of Celestia our judges. The challenge began. Each contestant had 3 hours to present their solution to the plague. Kestra went first, showcasing a brute force approach, a chemical agent that would eradicate all infected plant life, scorching the soil to prevent reinfection. Sometimes, to save the body, one must amputate the limb, she explained to the watching empire. My solution is decisive, final, and effective. When it was Liax's turn, she and Grant stepped forward together. Instead of chemicals or weapons, they presented the hybrid plants they had developed on the sanctuary moon, living solutions that could coexist with the plague, gradually transforming it through natural processes. The essence of leadership is not destruction, but transformation, Liax stated, as Grant demonstrated how the hybrids not only survived the plague, but eventually converted the pathogen into beneficial compounds. We don't eradicate our challenges, we grow through them. The contrast could not have been clearer. Kestra's path of control through force versus Liax's vision of adaptation and harmony. As the demonstrations concluded, the observers from each world cast their symbolic votes. The result was overwhelming. Liax's approach resonated across the empire. Kestra's face contorted with fury as the judgment became clear. "This changes nothing," she spat. "My forces will still—" "Your forces have already stood down," Emperor Valon interrupted, stepping forward. A holographic display activated, showing Kestra's flagship and cruisers, surrounded by the Celestian fleet. They watched this challenge, just as the rest of the Empire did. They've chosen their true empress. Kestra's hand darted to a concealed weapon, but before she could draw it, her own guards stepped back from her, isolated and defeated. She finally faced the truth. Her claim to the throne was finished. As Imperial guards led Kestra away to face justice for her crimes against the Empire, Grant and Liax stood together before the assembled representatives and the watching billions across the stars. Today marks not an ending, but a beginning. Liax declared, "The plague that threatened us has become the catalyst for a new understanding. That strength comes not from purity, but from integration. Not from dominance, but from cooperation." She turned to Grant, taking his hand in hers. "What began as an ancient law binding a human to a princess has become something far greater. A binding of worlds, of knowledge, of futures." 3 months later, as the hybrid gardens flourished across the healed worlds of Celestia, Grant stood on the balcony of the royal quarters, watching twin moons rise over the capital. Liax joined him, slipping her arm around his waist. "A message from New Terra arrived today," she said. "The first class of students is ready to join the academy. Your people are eager to learn more about their role in the stars." Grant smiled, thinking of how far they had come from that first day in the throne room. "And Kestra?" "Secure in her exile," Liax assured him. "The Outer Rim has stabilized under new leadership, and our border patrols remain vigilant." They stood in comfortable silence, contemplating the empire they were building together. One seed, one idea, one world at a time. "Do you ever think about how improbable this all is?" Grant asked finally. "A farmer from a conquered world and a princess from the stars?" Liax looked up at him, her silver eyes reflecting the moonlight. "Perhaps not so improbable. After all, what is more natural than life, finding a way to flourish, even in the most unlikely soil?" Grant pulled her closer, thinking of the seeds they had planted together, literal and metaphorical, spreading across the galaxy. "To growth," he said simply. "To growth," she echoed, as they turned their gaze to the stars, where Earth and Celestia were writing their shared future among the constellations.